and welcome back to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to draft a Vicky James asymmetric conical corset. So if this is something you like, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So here is my pattern paper. I've gone ahead to mark my bust point, my shoulder to under bust, my waist and my hip point. To get your hip point is 7 inches from your waist, or for a much taller person you can make use of 8 inches. Now I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2. My shoulder is 14 divided by 2. I have 7 inches. I'm going to go down by 1 inch and I'll go ahead to place my ruler and I will connect. Now I'll find my chest line, which is also your armhole. To get that is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, and I'll go ahead to rule a line, measure out what I have here, and I'll mark at this point. So I'm just going to go ahead and place and draw out a straight line which will serve as the chest line of this pattern. After I'm done marking that, the next thing you want to do is just to go ahead to draw out your armhole curve, but I'll be leaving that for now. Now I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'm going to stop at my under bust and I'm going to connect. The reason why is at the lower part we want to go ahead and slant the dart. So I'll mark the basic neckline, which is 3 inches by 3 inches, and I'll place my curved ruler and I'm going to connect. After I'm done doing that, you want to go ahead and divide what you have on the shoulder into 2. Now we're going to be using this as a guide when we are drawing out the dart intake for the upper part. So now for the lower part of this corset, I want to go ahead and make it a little curvy at this part, but you can go ahead and leave yours straight. So from there, I'm just going to mark 2 inches at the lower part and I'm just going to go ahead to connect it this way. So at this point, I'll place my tape. I'll be marking 0.75 at both sides. And at this point, I'll go ahead to mark ½ inch. So the reason why I'm doing this is that this corset has a lot of panels and you don't want to make it too curvy. It might be a little difficult to join. So I'm just going to go ahead to connect back my pattern this way. And after that, I'm going to place my French curve or curved rule, and I'll connect at the bust and also connect at the other parts of my pattern. So this is what I have on this point. Now from the chest line, I will be going up by 2 inches. So this is just to serve as a guide. It's not like a standard, and I'll mark out a fence line at that point. So now I'll be taking my dart intake. For this part, I'll be using 0.75. You can also go ahead and use ½ inch. So just like I said, this panel comes with a lot of dart manipulation and also with a lot of curves, so you don't want to go ahead and add too much dart intake on it, so that when you're joining your pattern back, it's not going to be too curvy. So this is what I have on this point. Now I'm going to be marking my body measurements, but before that, I'll just go ahead to use my marker to outline. At the bust, I'm going to mark the bust circumference divided by 4. Measure this dart intake. You have to go ahead and replace it and add my sewing allowance. So on the under bust, I'm going to mark the under bust circumference divided by 4. Measure the dart intake, replace it and add my sewing allowance. Now on the waistline, we are going to snatch the waistline. But to do that, we are going to be adding that. So for that, we'll be marking our original waistline divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it and add the sewing allowance. On the hip point, we're going to mark the hip circumference divided by 4, and I'll be adding 3 inches to it and then add ½ inch. So remember, this is a conical corset. That is why we are adding the extra 3 inches to this pattern. Now I'll go ahead and place my curved rule and I'm going to go ahead to connect all my patterns. So I'll use a freehand sketch to draw this out because it is easier for me to do that. After drawing that out, I'm just going to go ahead to use my marker to outline my pattern to make it more visible. So now we're going to divide what we have here into 3, because on each side we have about 4 panels. So what I have here is 5 inches. So I'll divide 5 inches by 3, and what I have is 1.66. So I'll make it roughly 1.7, and I'll go ahead to mark this out. So your measurements might not be the same with mine. So I'm just going to go down to the lower part of this pattern, and I will be measuring about 1.5 or 2 inches. So just like I said, I want to make my pattern a little curvy, but if you want yours straight, go ahead to do that. And it's not compulsory that your dart lines will be curvy or slanty. Now I'll just go ahead to place my ruler, and I'm going to connect this way. So this is what I have. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead to place my ruler, and I will draw a straight line. So going to the other pattern, from what we have at the thumbnail, it is meeting the armhole area of this pattern. So I'll connect it, and if you notice, there is a little small, but we are just going to work with it that way. And that is where my shoulder point is. So I'm just going to connect it to the armhole. So now, after I'm done doing that, I'll just go ahead to outline my pattern. So feel free to make yours a straight line. I want mine to be a little curvy. So now let's work on the waistline. My actual waistline is 28 inches, and I want to take out 4 inches from it. Taking out 4 inches, I have 24. So I'll divide my actual waistline, which is 28 divided by 4, I have 7. The new waistline, which is 24 inches divided by 4, I have 6 inches. So that's 7 inches. I'll take away 6 inches from it, and I'm left with 1 inch. So that 1 inch, I'll be sharing it on my pattern. So I will divide this 1 inch into 2, then I have 0.5. So I'll be sharing 0.5 on each side of the pattern. I'll mark 0.25 at this point, and then mark 0.25 at the other point. So on this part also, I'll mark 0.25 here and mark 0.25 here. So with that way, we have 0.5 here, 0.5 at the end. By the time you snatch this from one side of this pattern and repeat this on the other side, which is you do it on the left side, on the right side, you end up snatching your waistline. So if you have any question regarding this, please leave your question at the comment section. So now I'll go ahead and connect my dart this way down to my pattern. And I'll also go ahead and repeat this for the other side of my pattern this way. Go ahead to connect, and I'll also connect. So this is what I have after I'm done connecting all my pattern. So moving upwards, we want to go ahead and divide our armhole into 2, and I will come out by ½ inch. Now I'll measure my bust circumference divided by 4, place my French curve, and I'm going to draw my armhole curve. So after I'm done marking out my armhole curve, the next step is just to go ahead to outline all my pattern. And after I'm done outlining my pattern, I'm just going to go ahead to use my scissors to cut out this pattern. So if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and also leave your comments at the comment section. So I'll just cut out the excess I have at the lower part, and I'm going to spread open my pattern, and after that I'll be transferring all my measurements to the other side. So after I'm done transferring my measurements, this is what I have, and now we're going to go ahead to draw out the neckline of this particular corset. So to draw out our neckline, we notice that one part started at the upper part, and I'm going to go ahead to use my free hand to do this. So if you can use a French curve, go ahead to do that, but if you're good at using a freehand sketch, that is also okay. At this point, I'll come up 2 inches from my chest line, and I'm going to go ahead to connect. So I'm done drawing out the neckline, and I'm going to mark it out. So after marking it out, I'll also go ahead to blend this out because of the dart we have at the other side of this pattern. So now you want to go ahead and extend your dart up this way, and also extend it at the other side. After you're done extending it, you want to go ahead to use your marker to outline it so that it's going to be very visible. So at that side of the dart that you blended in, we are going to go ahead to blend in the dart after that. So after doing this, you can go ahead and remeasure your neckline and then add about half or 1 inch to it because of the dart intake we took out at this upper part. But if you're okay with your pattern, you can just leave it that way. So I'm just going to leave mine that way and I'm going to blend it out. So after I'm done blending in my dart, this is what I have, and the next step is just for me to cut out my pattern. So that center line we have, I'm also going to mark it out. So I'll go ahead to label my pattern and I'm going to go ahead to cut it all out. And don't forget also to extend your dart lines to the upper part because you'll be cutting it out. And go ahead to cut out the dart that you have at those points. So if you're sewing this pattern, you're going to be adding ½ inch for your joining allowance. So after cutting out my pattern, this is what I have, and this is the final look of the front part of the corset. So we're going to go ahead to cut out the back pattern, and for the back pattern I have marked out all the basic measurements just like we did for the front. So the first thing we're going to do is to go ahead and mark our nipple to nipple because we want to mark out our dart. And for the back pattern, we are not using a zip, we are using a lacing bar. So I'm just going to go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to connect a straight line. So now we are going to be taking our normal dart of ½ inch and I'll go ahead to extend it upwards this way, and I'm going to also extend it down to the lower part of my pattern. So after this, we are going to go ahead and impute our measurements: bust circumference divided by 4 plus my sewing allowance, my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake and add my sewing allowance. At the waistline, I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake and replace my sewing allowance. At the hip, I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4, add the 3 inches for the conical hip effect and ½ inch for my sewing allowance. And after that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to connect from my hip point, from my waistline down to my hip point this way, and I'm going to use my marker to mark it all out so that it's going to be very visible for you to see. So after I'm done marking out, remember that we snatched our waist. After doing the calculation, we got about 1 inch. So on the back pattern, we'll just add 1 dart intake on this part. So I'm just going to rule a straight line. So instead of dividing that 1 inch and drawing out like 2 style lines, I'm going to use 1, and I'll go ahead to mark ½ inch at both sides. So ½ inch at both sides will give me 1 inch. So this is what I have for the back pattern, and on this part I'm going to use my marker to outline it to make it more visible for you to see. So after I'm done marking this out at this point, the next step is to work on the upper part of this corset. So here I'm going to mark ½ inch and I'm going to place my French curve or my curve ruler, and I'm going to connect all the way to the chest line. This is to make sure that my pattern does not pop up. That is when you're done sewing it. So I'll go ahead and mark 1.5 inches. So this is not a standard. You can use 2 inches or create any design you want on your lacing bar. So I'll just connect and draw a straight line, make a dot to indicate my lacing bar, and I will label it. So with this, my back pattern is ready. So I'll go ahead and cut out. So for the back pattern, you can go ahead and reduce the length by 1 inch or more, or you can just leave it this way, because from what we have on the thumbnail is a little close to the hip point. So I'm just going to go ahead and I will cut this out this way and cut the rest of my pattern. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. Please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and join us in our next video. Thanks.